Shane? Aye, you went in that Ribena?
Aye.
Aye.
Is this one right? Yeah.
Wait there to put my phone in my pocket.
Right, done it.
Aye, go for it. Good, did it? Can't beat a Ribena, man. It pulled my mask down at the back of my head a bit.
Aye.
It's kind of falling down a wee bit.
Aye, if you move to front, yeah.
Who am I?
Who are you and what do you do?
Okay, my name is Sanjeev, aka Supermann On Da Beat, and I'm a producer, promoter, and activist.
I'm Stephen Reside. I'm a broadcast production student here at UWS, and I've started my YouTube channel advocating for disabled facilities at football grounds. But I'm also a big music lover and go to gigs, try to get to a gig at least once a month, and go to about 2 or 3 festivals a year, so I'm well versed on the gig side of things as well.
So my condition is called Duchenne muscular dystrophy. So basically, it's like a muscle wasting condition. So your muscles like kind of get weak over time. But I guess recently I'm kind of trying to kind of move away from like what is like medically associated with it, because I feel like thinking that doesn't help when maybe it's not the case, if that makes sense. So like, but on paper that's what it is.
So I was born with cerebral palsy. So for the age of about, since I can remember, about 4 or 5, I've either had a walking frame or a wheelchair to help me get about. As I've got fatter and I've got heavier, the walking frames became less of a thing that I've used, and I just use the wheelchair now. But all I've known is who I am and cerebral palsy. And
So over time, so I used to be able to walk until I was about 8, 9, and then I went into like a manual wheelchair. So basically, you kind of slowly lose movement. Stuff like walking, I used to be able to walk, and it gradually kind of gets less and less. So growing up was pretty, like, I guess, normal until I was like 9, and that's when the changes sort of started to happen. So.
growing up, I think that it's when you're older. So see, when you're younger, you just think, oh, I remember asking my mum, telling my mum, sorry, I want to be a football player when I'm older. Never going to happen, right? Just no possible. But that's the naivety of being young, and it's not until you kind of remember being your teens, you realise, wait, I'm actually stuck with this. This is like, I need to adapt here.
Like growing up, I felt quite isolated, and I never really felt like I had a community or like a friend circle really. Like at school, when people like talk about when they're at school and like they've got like a group of friends, I never really had that. So I think that's why community is so important to me, because like I don't want other people to feel that isolation of feeling like you're not a part of anything, like that sort of separation where you feel like you're not. Yeah, I feel like you're not part of society.
I think there's 2 things in life that can just take you away from whatever's going on. I think one's football and the other one's music. I would argue more so music than football, because I think you can literally pour any emotion into a song or into like a band's performance, and it's just, it allows you to kind of go through that kaleidoscope of emotions and just kind of place them from song to song, and it just takes you away from stress. It'll be the same for an able-bodied person. That's not just a disabled thing, that's just a life thing. But it just allows you that escapism.
But music is so important to me, and like with Hip Hop Scotland and the shows we run and the artists like I work with, like it's all collaborative and it's all like building community and connecting dots and like connecting artists to other artists.
So just like talk to me, like what's it like working with Sanjeev?
It's been amazing so far. I think we've only worked together 3 or 4 times, but it ends up being 50% chatting nonsense. Beautiful nonsense where we just go into like neurodivergence and we just get really in-depth conversations so quickly. But then it's so much fun and like we get an idea and we just like bounce off each other and just go with it. Hence a SpongeBob sample in this tune, which is pretty mad. But yeah, no, he's a legend, so lovely to work with, and yeah, we're only at the start really.
His class man, I pretty much do everything for him. He's just the face of the organisation. I think it's crazy that he manages to do what he's doing. Fucking makes beats literally with 3 fingers. And that's not even a word I lie.
It's not even an exaggeration.
So, I think he's a testament to his will.
For all you know, if you sit down with the person that you're beside at a gig, you might not like them, you might not get on with them, but see for the hour at that concert, if you're listening to the same band and enjoying the same music, and everybody's best pal, it just brings everybody together. And I think as well, it's not just the songs, but it's the memories of going to concerts, the friendships you make. It can tie into music. Like some of the best friendships I've got with people are the people that have got similar music taste to me, because it immediately gives you something to talk about. If I've not been to a gig in a month, then it's almost like I'm starving. I'll go back to the food analogy again. I need to eat, you know what I mean? I need to go to a gig. 2018, it was November 2018, I was at quite a low point mentally. And my favourite band, as you'll know, the 1975, I remember that they'd released a new album. I was feeling suicidal at that point and probably about to take my own life. And I remembered that they had released an album. I thought I'll listen to this before, just give myself one last moment of happiness before I'm finished. And there was a song, and it's the last song in the album, called I Always Want to Die Sometimes. And there's a line in that. It says, your death, it won't happen to you, it will happen to your family and your friends. And that one line stopped me from doing whatever it was I was going to do. It just made me think. So I think that shows the power of music. And I know that's probably not a happy memory, but I'm sure for anybody listening or watching, it'll be quite a powerful kind of a message, and it just shows you the power of music.
In 2020, I had like a near-death experience basically, and I was in a hospital, and I was just in a really like, I guess mentally, in quite a dark place, and like music that time like really got me through it. So I feel like that's like a big thing that music has just like, yeah, like helped me get through a lot of like difficult times in my life. So I feel like that's why like it means so much to me, because like I don't know where I would. It's like so cliche, but I don't know where I would be without it. And like I can't imagine doing anything else. So it's like weird, but yeah, I just love it. I guess it was something that I always wanted to do, but I never really thought of how I would do it, because I just naturally thought that I would need to physically be able to like play an instrument. So I never really pursued it, but it was always something I loved. Like I loved going to gigs, generally just love music, and like I always wanted to like try and give it a go, but I just didn't really know where to start. But in lockdown, I like had a lot of time, and I just like looked into it more, like just sort of googled like how I could go about making music and stuff like that, and then I was looking for softwares that was like pretty easy to use for like a beginner. And then I just like looked around and I found this software called Soundtrap. And it was just really like intuitive, like easy to use. And I had no idea what I was doing. It's funny because I've got like no background in music, like at all. Like I didn't even do it, and like I didn't even do like standard grade music or anything. So I guess that was also a barrier in my head. I was like, what do I need to know to be able to do it? So then I just like found that software, and then just used YouTube to kind of learn how to like make beats, like more towards like hip hop, because that's like what I was into. I had just watched tutorials on how to make beats, And it just sort of went from there. It kind of turned out that I had like a year for it. And then the more I was doing it, I was just like, I just love doing this. Like every time I made a beat, I just loved it. And it just like took me to like another place. In terms of making music, I think I've obviously had to like adapt more because I can't like play a guitar, for example. So I feel like that's like shaped how I approach music. So like that's probably why I'm more like sample based. And also like a lot of DAWs now you can actually like, write anyway. So like you can write a piano or you can write a guitar. So I guess just learning how to do that instead of physically playing a guitar. So I guess that's affected my approach. And then like in terms of doing live stuff, when I'm DJing, like finding a software that I can use because I couldn't like physically like use decks. So that's when I use like virtual DJ on my laptop. I just learning how to use that, I guess, because I wasn't able to like use a typical like DJ deck.
The challenges that you face can even be before the gig, because before you get anywhere, you have to prove your disability. So you need to fill in forms, send your PIP, and this is for every time I go to a festival. I think you can pay for an Nimbus card that gets you it for 3 years, but I'm a cheapskate and I just fill it out every year. So it's just proving disability constantly. And then as well, it depends on venue. So some venues, like for example, the Barrowlands it's an old-fashioned venue, one of my favourites. They have a stair climber to get you up the stairs, but it's dead slow. So I'm fortunately mobile enough to be able to take myself up 3 flights. But if I look at King Tut's, you can't get in King Tut's as a disabled person. There's just no disabled access. And it's easy to sit and finger point and blame venues and say, oh, you should be doing this, should be doing that. What you need to take into account is what the people who are in the venue or who own the venue are working with. King Tut's is an old venue, the same with the Barrowlands. So I don't think it's right to set the same standards for the King Tut's as you would say an O2 Academy or a Hydro. They're no comparable because two of them are a lot more modern than the other two that I mentioned. So, but there's loads of challenges. It's like making sure that you're going to have a decent enough view to be able to enjoy the experience. Sometimes as well, it's not, you need to say, oh, I need accessibility, you need to send an email. I think one thing I would say is it needs to be more prevalent where this information is, because sometimes it's hidden amongst a section in a website. You need to dig and dig and dig and dig to find the email that you need to send. So obviously I've got a note in the morning on my phone, but then it's just that first instance of finding that email. It should be almost on the front page, or it should be pinned on Twitter or whatever, just so that information's there.
I would say one of the main challenges that I've kind of spoke about a lot in the past is just like access to venues, and being able to like perform on stage. Like firstly, a lot of them don't have access at all, even for the audience. And then the ones that do have access for the audience, most of the time don't have access to the stage. So that's something that I've really realised. So I'll be kind of trying to push for more access for performers to like get on stage, because a lot of places just don't have ramps, or like it's something they've never really thought about. And like I actually kind of understand why, because there isn't many disabled artists, so like it just doesn't really come into your head that you might need to make it accessible when there's like a lack of disabled artists. So I think it's really important just to like make awareness, so like people are aware that, oh shit, there is disabled artists. So I think a lot of people just overlook it, and I don't think that's like their fault. It's just the way society is. Like when you don't really see it, it doesn't really come into your head. Like as a promoter as well, because I put on shows through Hip Hop Scotland, and it's kind of hard to do my job when so many venues aren't accessible. So I'm kind of limited to like 2 or 3 venues, like that are like 100, 150 capacity. And yeah, that just makes it harder to do my job, because if there's an artist that I want to bring up and those three venues aren't available, like, we can't do the show. So, like, it limits how I can, like, promote, especially because that's, like, my main income. It just makes it harder when there's not as many options. So, kind of small venues that I think, like, fit is probably, like, Poetry Club and Glad Cafe for, like, 100, 150 cap. They're pretty much the only two venues that we use at that size. Because it seems to be smaller venues, like bigger venues that are like 500 upwards, generally tend to be fine, but it seems to be more like these smaller venues. So yeah, I guess that's an option, and also like working with them, like if there's a venue that isn't accessible, like I'm also open to like working with them to help them make it more accessible. So I guess that's also an option.
Are there any like accessibility features that have made like your music experience better?
I think just platforms in general. The ones that they do at the Hydro, they've got platforms right at the front. So see, you know how you get the standing section? Just at the back of the standing section, there's platforms. So you almost feel quite near the front. The Barrowlands, when you get there, the platform's really good because it's a really intimate venue. But the one that I have to mention, and this sets the standard for me, is the O2 Academy, because they take you down a ramp in, they take you to where you're positioned, and they almost, you know how you get the barriers in the O2 Academy, like, before you go down the 3 steps?
Yeah.
They almost created a window. So they've cut out the barriers so that you've got a clear eye line right to the stage. And I remember seeing the 1975 in there for the first time, and it was just like, wow. Because I was literally right in line. There was nobody in my eye line, it was just me looking straight at the band. It was fantastic. So anytime I've got a gig in there, I just, yes, it's in the O2 Academy. But again, I know I've kind of mentioned this to a climber. I love the Barrowlands just because of it's iconic, isn't it? There was a scenario a couple of years ago now, well, about 18 months ago as we're sitting here today, Leeds Festival 2023, where they had overbooked the platforms and the platforms just weren't big enough. And I found myself for Imagine Dragons in the crowd, and then I found myself for the Killers. For the Killers, I may as well have been in a different postcode, because I was literally right at the back where the bars are. And you could hear them, but there was no chance I was seeing them. I am a strong advocate for bigger platforms, because I even had the situation with Transmit where they'd get back to me last year and said, we're fully booked, we can't fit you in. I've ended up on BBC on the 9. Almost like, this just isn't acceptable. This needs to be corrected. And one thing that I will say to Louise Hutchinson, that works at DF Concerts and responsible for the accessibility, they got stuff in gear, they got the stuff in order, and that is the best experience I have had at a festival. The platform was massive, there was plenty of toilets, they had changing places toilets for people with more severe disability that need them. They had headphones for maybe people with autism who are sensitive to sound, because I think there was pyrotechnics during Jerry Cinnamon's performance. You get this at Leeds as well, but there was also people signing for the deaf. Every stone they had covered, and I believe they'd won awards for it, and rightly so, because it was just fantastic. It was brilliant. I don't know how people would feel about this, but I would like information tents about on disabilities. People often ask me, what is cerebral palsy? So you could almost use places like that to educate folk. With more information comes more understanding, and when you've got more understanding, more things get done. I would like there to be an option, if it was possible, to get a platform closer to the stage as well, because as a disabled person, I'm never going to experience what it's going to be like at the front. a concert. That's just not an option that's available to me. So is it possible for that to happen? I don't know. And then you pay a higher rate, so it makes them more money because you're getting a better view. I don't know. I'm spitballing here, but these are all ideas that have come into my head. I just want to make sure that when disabled people are paying the same price as able-bodied people, albeit yes, we get a kid free, but we need that. That we're getting an experience that we enjoy, and we're not sitting in crowds with our views hampered. It's not a health and safety risk because it is to sit in wheelchairs in a crowd of thousands of people. I mean, I had people trip up over my wheelchair. It was 10% of the world's population have a registered disability. I don't know any disabled artists, and that might be me being naive.
I only really know like a couple that are like physically disabled. I do know people that are like neurodivergent and stuff. Yeah, I feel like there's a lack of artists, disabled artists, for like a number of reasons, and I think one of them it's like a loop, because one of them is the fact that there's not enough access to stages. So that's like one of the reasons, because when people like, they don't really believe that they can do it. So like growing up, I never ever saw a disabled person perform on stage like that was physically disabled, that was looked like me. The more I'm on stage, the more like other people are going to see me on stage and then think they can do it. And then the more I'm on stage means like the more it paves the way for more disabled artists. And then like the more people are aware of disabled artists, the more likely they are to have raps and stuff like that. I think another reason is just the lack of like accessible like instruments and ways to create music, and like the lack of awareness around that. Like, cause in schools they teach music like classically, like playing instruments, but if they like integrated like using software and like DAW and like beat making, that would make the whole thing way more accessible, because like if I could have done that in music, I would have done it. But it wasn't available. So like the only thing that was available was playing instruments. But it's more about awareness. I think that's the funny thing. Like there is stuff out there, but it's just making people aware of it and making it like the cost of it, because a lot of accessible adaptations as a whole, like just even outside music, is just like really expensive. So there is software out there, but it is just like really expensive. So it's like, how do we make that accessible so people can use it without the cost? For example, there's a software called eye gaze, where you can control a computer like with your eyes, but it's like £3,000, and like people don't have that sort of money to spend. There is like funding available for artists generally, but I do think there should be like, for example, like Creative Scotland have got like their open fund, but I think they should have funding dedicated towards disabled artists, because I think that would be more beneficial for um like disabled artists, because there'd be a dedicated fund, which makes it like more likely that they'd be able to get funding. So I think that would definitely be beneficial to have like a part dedicated towards it, or even just like, yeah, funds like only open for disabled artists. For sure.
No, I'm not saying for one moment there is not opportunities for people to work within the industry and work, because I know that there's people with registered disabilities that work with DF concert and accessibility, and that's the way it should be. Because what do you need for any job? You need experience, right? So why are the people that make decisions for disabled people not qualified people with registered disabilities? Because they know exactly what it is that disabled people need. And I think that's what people like Louise do so well, is that they've obviously educated themselves on these things because they know it's their job, and that's why she's won awards. I just think there's we'll do the bare minimum and we'll make sure we have something with it. Should the opinion should change, or the attitude, should change to, right, this is what these people need. How do we make sure that we give them that so that they have the best weekend possible or the best experience at a gig for 2-3 hours?
When asked about like why I was like doing this project, I was like, a lot of it was just a like personal experience because like I don't think. I mean, I'd like to not think I would, but I probably would. But like, see, if I hadn't met you, I would never be having these conversations.
You're not the first person to say that. But I don't take that offensively. I think that's a good thing. Because I think it, sorry, but in there as well, I think it shows that I can change people's perspective. And that's fine. Because that's what it should be about. People need to be educated. People don't cut. There's no handbook with this information for people. So, let's tell them, as I've got a physical disability, but you asked about what more needs to be done. I think there needs to be a lot more information on invisible disabilities like Crohn's and autism, because I'll hold my hand up. I'm not well educated on these things. I only know cerebral palsy because I have cerebral palsy. Because I'll give you an example. My carer, my best mate Ross, he's got Crohn's disease. And because his disability is invisible, they almost stopped him from coming in to use the disabled toilet when he needs to use that just as much as I do. That's what we need to do. We need to get people to realise that no disabilities are visible. Because sometimes I think you can feel that people are looking at you. It's not, it should never be like that because it's just who you are. Do you know what I mean? Like, it could have happened to you, could have happened to me, could have happened to anybody. Do you know what I mean? It's just who these people are and what they need.
Like, in terms of how people perceive me, it's more just like a general life thing rather than like attached to music. So I think there's always going to be people that like stigmatize disability or like think that we can't do something, or sometimes I get like people talking to me like I'm a kid, and I think a lot of that is just like society's stigma, or like what society thinks of disability being like not what it really is. So like people sometimes talk to me like I'm a kid because they think like I can't understand them or whatever, which is funny. So I think like a lot of it is just how society sees disability. So like the more awareness of that people like me doing stuff, like being on stage, doing music, the more like people be like, oh shit, actually, they're not different. It's mad to say like in 2025, but there's definitely is still people that kind of see disability as like different.
If Transmit can put a sensory space in, if Transmit can put a change in places toilet, if Transmit can make their platform huge, Leeds Festival's a bigger festival. Leeds Festival is in a bigger field. Why am I going to Leeds Festival and the platforms are tiny? When Transmit have just shown everybody. Alright, I'll be at last show, but interesting to see what happens this year. Because Transmit have showed everybody last year, this is how it's done. Why don't the people who are responsible for access at different venues as well get together and have a conversation? And have a conversation with disabled folk, the people that go to the festivals. It's alright doing surveys. People can sit and tick anything on a survey, right? Sit down and actually have a conversation with folk. Because you'll get a lot more information out of a conversation than what you will somebody ticking a box in a survey. Through a questionnaire, you wouldn't have got my lead story. You wouldn't have got the Transmit story. You wouldn't have got the story that I told you about in 1975 and me struggling with mental health and the power of music that way. This interview alone just shows you. It's got to be a conversation that's had with the venues and say, right, look at this venue. How can we improve this venue to make it more accessible for disabled people? And are we maximising what we can get out of this venue? Or are we just being lazy and not doing enough? That's the question. As long as you're maximising what you've got, I can't say nothing to you. And anybody with a disability can't say anything. But if there's something you can do and you're not doing it, I don't want to hear the money. It's just, I don't. And maybe we should look at governments as well. Because there's legislation out there. The public buildings need to be fully disabled accessible. And you've got employment law equality and stuff like that now as well. Why are music venues any different?
Yeah, I think people are starting to understand that, and they're starting to think about access when they're like people that own a venue, for example. Like, I feel like they're more likely to know about it now than they did like 10 years ago. Like, if there was some funding for venues to be able to make these changes, because venues, like, especially after COVID, venues are like just about struggling. And there's so many venues that are like just about making it through. So like, it's unfair. Like, a lot of venues just don't have the money to make these changes. So I think there should be like some sort of, again, like government funding there, specifically for venues to make like accessible like changes. So like maybe buy a ramp, for example, because these ramps are like £1,000, £2,000, and they don't really just have that lying about. So I think that is important, but also like normalizing it. So like, to me, it should be like as normal as like a toilet, or it should be the same. Like, if you're opening a venue, you should be aware like you need a toilet, and like venues don't then say like, oh, we can't afford a toilet for people. Get what I mean? Even that's just a cost. So I think if you're starting a venue or opening a venue at the start, you need to be aware of it's just something that it has to be the premise. Like, you shouldn't be allowed to open a venue if it's not fully accessible. Obviously, different venues that are already open, like that can't really make the changes or just don't have the money. But I think for new venues, like that should be like part of just having a venue, like as if there's like a toilet which you just need. So
If you could share one message about being a disabled fan, what would it be?
I think it would be to people who maybe feel like they can't go out the house and maybe are a bit scared that they might be looked at, or maybe don't feel like they would belong. I think you absolutely do. And I've found that taking yourself out of your comfort zone, you live your best experiences that way. I used to always go to the same nightclub, same pub. See, when I started going to places that I maybe wouldn't have went, I'd have been like, no, I'm not going there. So that's when you meet the best people, that's when you have the best time. And it's the same with music and with concerts. You never know you like a band until you hear them.
don't let the access issues, like the physical issues, stop you pursuing your dreams, because there's always a way. Like, if you've got a dream, you always need to believe it can happen. So I think, yeah, believing that you're capable and believing that your music is good enough, or not even good enough, but just make the music you want to make, and there's going to be somebody that's going to like it.
But my message would be go. Like, don't hold yourself back, just go. But make sure I've got a ticket first, so that I've got space.
The system wasn't built for us. The system wasn't built for us. They treat disability like inferiority. We're all a minority, fighting for equality. We don't want your pity, we just want equity. The game is fixed. What goes round